Okay, let's really get into this first lesson from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We got these key excerpts from the first chapter, and what we want to do in this deep dive is, pull out the core ideas, not just summarize, but really understand the thinking that the source says is, well, vital for getting ahead financially.
Absolutely. And it kicks off with this vivid scene, doesn't it? It's 1956. We've got this 9-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And he's feeling that sting, feeling poor, left out. His buddies are off to some beach house in a brand new Cadillac, and he wasn't invited.
Oof. That childhood feeling of being on the outside looking in, and that feeling, that sort of lack, it lights a fire under him, right?
Yeah.
He decides, I want to be rich.
Yep. And the first person he goes to is his own father, the one the book calls his poor dad.
Highly educated guy, works for the government, solid job, presumably.
Right. And the kid just asks him straight up, Dad, how do I get rich?
And the answer is, well, probably familiar to a lot of people.
Totally. It's that kind of well-meaning, but pretty vague advice. Use your head. You got to work for it. Then he basically admits, look, I don't actually know how to make money, like really make money. And he suggests, go talk to Mike's dad.
Boom. There it is. The setup for the whole book, right? That contrast. And for us, for this deep dive, the big question coming out of these sources is, what is that fundamental difference? The almost invisible shift in thinking about money between the poor or middle class and the rich. It's not just about having more cash, it's the mindset.
Exactly. It's a perspective shift. That's what the book argues changes the game entirely.
Okay, so this desire to get rich is burning now. The author and his friend Mike, they team up. They form a business partnership.
They do. And their first business venture, well, it's certainly creative. Maybe a little too creative.
Okay, what was it?
They decided they were going to make their own money. Literally. By melting down old lead toothpaste tubes. Apparently that was a thing.
Lead toothpaste tubes? Seriously?
Yep. And casting their own nickels, you got to picture it. They've got this stockpile of tubes, a hibachi grill going, a pot for melting the lead, milk cartons filled with plaster of Paris.
Oh my gosh. Like a little backyard mint.
Totally. A mini counterfeit operation. And naturally, Poor Dad and a friend eventually stumble across this whole setup.
I bet. Plaster dust everywhere, probably.
Exactly. And Poor Dad has to break the news, guys, points for effort, but this is counterfeiting. This is illegal.
Right. Dreams crushed. But wait, Poor Dad's reaction is interesting here, isn't it?
It really is, because even though it's illegal, he's actually proud of them. Proud they took initiative, showed creativity, that they actually did something instead of just talking about it.
Yeah, the source quotes him saying something like, you're only poor if you give up, and encouraging them not to quit trying things. You've done something, he says. It's this interesting push for action, even if the action itself was, well, misguided.
It really emphasizes that value of just doing something, taking a shred, which maybe gets lost sometimes in the standard advice. So after the nickel scheme gets shut down, that's when they approach Mike's dad, the rich dad.
Okay, and he's described as a businessman, right? Warehouses, construction, stores, but lives pretty simply.
Yeah, seems like it. Simple house. But even on a Saturday morning, he's surrounded by employees, getting stuff done. He's clearly busy.
And Mike tells the author his dad will teach them, but it won't be like school.
Right. No classroom lectures. Rich Dad's offer is pretty straightforward. You work for me, I'll teach you. You don't work, I don't teach. He even adds this pressure point, like opportunities come and go fast. Decide now.
Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And the pay for this apprenticeship.
10 cents an hour. For 3 hours every Saturday, working at one of his superettes.
Wow, 10 cents.
Yeah.
But the author bites, right? He even skips a softball game because he's so set on learning the secret to getting rich.
He does. He's committed. So they start work, and for the first 3 weeks, what are they doing?
Dusting cans. Sounds riveting.
Exactly. Mind-numbing work. For a grand total of 30 cents a week.
Okay, I can see where this is going.
Yeah.
The frustration must have been building.
Oh, yeah. By week 4, the author's had enough. He feels totally ripped off, like he's just cheap labor, a slave, as he puts it. He's ready to quit.
And then Mike drops a little bomb.
Right. Mike says, basically, yeah, my dad knew this would happen. He was actually waiting for you to get angry and want to quit.
Whoa. Okay, so it was a setup. Now contrast that with how Poor Dad reacts when he hears about the 10 cents an hour.
Totally different reaction. Poor Dad is furious. He's talking child labor laws, saying the pay is exploitation, telling the author he absolutely has to demand a raise or just walk out.
Which really highlights that conventional view, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Focus on the wage, the fairness of the pay, your rights as an employee. It's all about trading time for money.
Precisely. It's a completely different framework from what Rich Dad seems to be trying to teach.
So the author, armed with this indignation, finally goes to confront Rich Dad. Must have been quite a scene.
You can imagine. He's anxious, then he finally lets loose. Tells Rich Dad he's greedy, a crook, that he broke his promise to teach him anything.
And Rich Dad's response?
So calm, almost detached. He just listens and then says something like, "Not bad. In less than a month, you sound just like most of my employees."
Ouch. That's gotta sting.
Big time. He basically tells the kid he sounds like all the people who complain and quit or get fired. And then he explains his philosophy.
Which is?
That life teaches you by, well, pushing you around. Most people just let it happen. Or they get mad and push back, but they push against the wrong thing, the boss, the job, the low pay.
Instead of learning the lesson, life is trying to teach them.
Exactly. He says if you learn the lesson, you grow. If you don't, you just stay stuck, blaming everyone else. He talks about people lacking guts, playing it safe because the fear of losing is stronger than the excitement of winning. They end up living kind of boring, safe lives.
And the 10 cents an hour.
Yeah.
That's part of the push.
That was the point. It was a taste of life, as he calls it, a tiny paycheck for boring work. He says most people spend their whole lives working for money like that without ever stopping to think why or what they're really working for.
Okay, so here's the pivot. Rich Dad tells him, stop blaming me.
Right. He says, the problem isn't me, it's you. It's inside you. And crucially, it's easier to change yourself, change how you think, than it is to change your boss or your pay or the world.
So just quitting and looking for a slightly better paying job,
Right.
that's the easy default reaction.
That's the trap. Rich Dad challenges him. Use your head. Use the stuff between your ears, tapping his forehead apparently. Don't just react. Think.
Which leads to the next phase, which sounds even harder.
Yeah, working for nothing. Zero pay for 3 more weeks.
Okay, so now he's not even getting the 30 cents. The source mentions he's missing out on buying comics, playing baseball.
Right. There's a real cost now, even for a kid. And Rich Dad checks in on them after a while, buys them ice cream, seems friendly enough, asks them, so what have you learned working for free?
And they say,
nothing, basically. Just shrugs. They haven't connected the dots yet.
so Rich Dad has to spell it out more.
He does. He says this is where they can learn one of life's biggest lessons. He describes the trap. Working hard, maybe getting small raises, but always feeling insecure, always needing more money, looking forward to tiny vacations and hoping a pension will save them at the end. It's the cycle.
And then he tests them again, right, with money.
Oh yeah, big time. He starts offering them raises on the spot. First $1 an hour, which back then was huge for a kid. They're tempted. Then $2 an hour. Then $5 an hour.
$5, that must have been insane money.
Absolutely. And he's watching them, watching this internal battle, the desire, the greed, wanting that money versus, as the book puts it, some part of their soul that had no price, that knew this wasn't the real goal.
And that test, that temptation, is meant to reveal the core problem.
Exactly. He says most people's lives are driven by 2 main emotions when it comes to money. The fear of not having enough, of being poor, of bills piling up, and greed or desire wanting all the nice things money can buy, the comfort, the status.
And those 2 emotions, fear and greed, they create the pattern.
They create the rat race, as he calls it.
Yeah.
Get up, go to work, pay bills, feel the fear, work harder, feel the desire, spend more, need to work harder. It's a loop.
So the key is not letting those emotions run the show.
Right. He hammers this point. You have to be honest with yourself about feeling fear and desire. Don't pretend they aren't there. But then you need to use your mind, your thinking brain, to make decisions, not just react emotionally. Most people, he argues, just react. Fear hits, they run for a job. Desire hits, they buy something. They don't think.
He says the job, the money, it only soothes the fear temporarily.
Yeah, it doesn't actually solve the underlying fear. It just keeps you trapped in the cycle, needing the next paycheck. And desire works the same way. The joy of the purchase fades, so you need more money for the next hit of pleasure or comfort.
And this isn't just for people struggling, right? He says even rich people can be slaves to fear.
Absolutely. The fear of losing the money they have can control them just as much. They become, in his words, highly paid slaves to their own wealth and the fear of losing it.
He also makes a point about people who say, oh, I'm not interested in money.
Yeah, he finds that kind of dishonest, almost. If you're working 8 hours a day for money but claiming you're not interested in it, you're denying the reality of how it's influencing your life. He suggests that might be even more psychologically tricky than just being greedy.
So the other way he's trying to teach them involves what? Getting rid of fear and greed.
Not getting rid of them. You can't, really. It's about recognizing them, understanding them, and then learning to use them for you as motivation, maybe, rather than letting them use you, letting them trap you.
And what fuels the trap? What keeps people stuck?
Ignorance. Specifically, ignorance about how money actually works. He argues that the lack of financial education is the real root problem, much more than just not having enough money. Because if you don't understand money, your fear and desire just run wild.
Which contrasts sharply with Poor Dad's advice again.
Totally. Poor Dad's advice, study hard, get good grades, find a safe, secure job, often comes from a place of fear, according to Rich Dad. Fear of risk, fear of insecurity.
And schools. What's their role in this?
Well, the source is pretty critical here. It says schools are great at teaching you skills to work for money, to be a good employee, but they don't teach you how to make money work for you. They don't teach financial literacy or how to handle the emotions and ignorance surrounding money.
So it's really an internal struggle. Choosing to learn versus staying ignorant. Opening your mind versus closing it.
Exactly. And Rich Dad really paints a picture of how miserable that fear-driven life can be. Working constantly, thinking money will bring happiness, but always being terrified of bills, having your whole life dictated by that paycheck.
He also circles back to the idea of making money, clarifying it.
Yeah, distinguishing it from their illegal counterfeiting attempt earlier. He talks about how the rich legally make money, almost presenting money itself as, well, kind of an illusion. It's value based on collective confidence and, importantly, the general public's lack of understanding about it.
There's an analogy in there, too, the briar patch.
Right. Fear and greed are the briar patch. Most people avoid it, try not to think about those uncomfortable feelings, but the way out is to go through it, confront the fear, confront the desire, and use your thoughts to navigate, not just get stuck reacting emotionally like the tar baby in the old story.
So differentiate between just reacting emotionally, everyone has to work, the richer cheats, I need a raise, my job's safe.
Right, those knee-jerk thoughts. Differentiate between those and actually thinking, hang on, is there something I'm missing here? Is there a different way this could work?
Okay. And his final instruction, while they're still working for free, is basically the key to the next part.
It is, he tells them. Keep using your brain, keep working for free for now, and you'll start to see opportunities that other people miss entirely because they're only looking for the money, the paycheck, the security.
Does it work?
It absolutely does. They keep working, keep thinking, keep talking, observing what's going on around them at the superette.
And then they see it, the opportunity.
Yep. They notice Mrs. Martin, the store owner, doing something routine. She's ripping the front covers off old, unsold comic books. She sends the covers back to the distributor for credit.
And the rest of the comics.
She just throws them away, destroys them.
Opportunity knocks. Invisible to someone just focused on their hourly wage, maybe.
Exactly. They immediately see it. They go talk to the comic book distributor, ask if they can just have the comics that are going to be thrown out anyway. They promise they won't resell the actual books.
And the distributor says yes.
Apparently so. Why not?
Yeah.
So the partnership is back in business. But this time, instead of illegal lead nickels, their raw material is free, discarded comic books.
Okay, so what do they do with them?
They set up a comic book library right there in Mike's basement.
Smart. And the business model?
Simple but brilliant for their situation. They charge the neighborhood kids 10 cents admission. For that dime, you get 2 hours in the basement to read as many comics as you want.
Nice. Passive income potential. Do they run it themselves?
They hired Mike's younger sister to be the librarian, paid her $1 a week, plus she got to read all the comics she wanted. The source even notes this was their first taste of, management challenges, finding good help.
Even at that scale. But did it make money?
It did. They averaged about $9.50 a week for 3 months, which back then, for 2 kids, that was pretty good money. And crucially, it was mostly passive.
And that's the lesson clicking into place.
That's lesson number 1 right there. They figured out how to make money work for them. They used their minds, their observation, that stuff between their ears, to spot value where others saw trash.
They didn't ask for a job. They created a system, a business that generated income.
Right. They took control. And the beauty was that $9.50 a week kept coming in even when they weren't physically sitting there in the basement, reading comics alongside the customers. They weren't just trading hours for dimes anymore.
That whole comic book library, born out of working for nothing and being forced to think, that was the something else Rich Dad promised to teach them.
Exactly. Proof that they'd gotten it. They understood the first lesson.
Okay, so let's wrap this deep dive up. If we boil down this first chapter, this first lesson from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the absolute core takeaway is?
It's really stark, isn't it? The fundamental difference isn't how much you earn initially. It's whether you spend your life working for money or if you learn how to make money work for you.
And the biggest things holding people back from making that shift, according to the source, are those powerful emotions, fear and desire. Fear of not having enough, desire for more stuff. They keep people on the treadmill, chasing the next paycheck.
Yeah, stuck in that rat race. And the way out, the path demonstrated by that comic book library example, is consciously using your mind, questioning your assumptions, pushing past the emotional reactions, and training yourself to see opportunities that are invisible when you're just focused on security and wages.
Which leaves a really interesting question for you, the listener, to chew on. How can you start to look at your own situation differently? How can you move even slightly from just trading your time for money towards finding ways to make money work for you? And maybe take a moment to think honestly at what fears, what desires might be driving your financial decisions right now? And how could you start using your thinking brain, that stuff between your ears, to challenge them and maybe see things in a new light?